Hi there, it's Jeff. In this video today I'm going to be going through my top 3 favourite jigs that I use. So if you're a weekend warrior who likes to play with a bit of joinery over the weekend, or we've got a project coming, or just want to add to your tool collection, then stick around and watch this little video, and I'm going to show you how these jigs function and what purpose they do, and the great ways to use these jigs for your joinery processes. Okay, let's start with this little jig that I've got here on my right hand side here, which is my shelf pin or shelf hole jig that I use. And this one happens to be a handmade one. This is one I've made myself. You can see this video on my YouTube channel, making this shelf pin jig. The other one I've got here, which is pretty much does a similar thing, but it can also be used to do your hinge hinge plates for your hinges. But if you keep this jig, I'll go into it in detail. But when you're making this jig, that your holes are centered every 32 millimeters, industry standard. You can use this to mount your hinge plates for your hinges as well. This is a good jig that I use all the time. This one was actually made for me by a friend on a CNC machine, but the purpose of it is it sits up against the edge. You line up the center line of where you want your hinges, and you drill. If you notice on this jig here, I've got 2 rows. The first row from that edge there is 37 millimeters, which is the industry standard of where you need to mount these hinge plates for your doors. And the second row is spaced at 50 millimeters from that edge. So I generally use that outside edge 50 millimeter increment for my shelf pin holes. And that first run, as I said, that's for that can be used for your hinge plates. So you could actually, if you wanted to, make a row using that for those ones there to run your shelf holes and your hinges all in one. But if you want to space it out a little bit, generally when I do shelf holes, I don't usually do a run along the whole length of the cupboard. I just feel it looks a bit too busy. I just do them in a group of 3 or 5 at the max at the areas of where we want adjustable shelves, just to keep it a little bit neater. But that's an essential jig that I use, and I recommend you could make one. They're simple to make, or you can buy these type of jigs. I know that KREG does one, and it's quite good actually. It has little bushes too for your drill to go through a 5mm hole. And if I didn't have that, I'd probably buy something like that. But quite easily to make, and you can see that video on my channel as well. The second, another jig that's in front of me here that I use a lot is this. It's one made by BLUM, and it does your hinge holes. Hence, it's to suit BLUM hinges. There are different makes of hinge hole jigs. I know also KREG, which is this jig here, I'll go through in a minute, but KREG do also make one as well, which is quite inexpensive. This one here by BLUM, I won't say it's cheap, but it's worth it if you're doing a lot of hinge holes and that. So it's good quality also. And there is 2 ways that you can actually. It's got 2 actually clips here that you can toggle out, and so if you want the holes to go right through for your clip-on style hinges, that works well. But if you're using the screw-in type, which is here, you put these little clips on and you just drill down, and it leaves a little point for your screw holes in your hinge. It can also be adjusted to suit different thickness boards. I range from 16 millimeters to 18 to 21, even 25 mil if you're doing thick doors, and these clip on quite easily to use. It's got a center line at the front of it here, a marking, and you just line that up with you square a line on the end of your cab side of where you want the hinge, and you line that up, you know, to where you want it, and clamp the toggles down and drill away. It's really easy to use. So that's another one of my favorite jigs there that I use for my hinges. I'd be in trouble if I didn't have that. The other jig I've got here, lastly, is the KREG pocket hole jig. You may have seen me use this in some of my videos as well. I use this a lot doing drawer boxes, where I don't want the screws visible on the sides of the drawers. I also use this for my side fillers, to attach those on. But the only thing I've done here is made this base for the jig to sit down on. And there are different varieties of this KREG jig. This one I just happen to have. It's fairly inexpensive, to be honest. I think I paid about $160 odd for this. What you see in the blue here, the KREG jig. And like I said, I've made this base for my material to sit down. So if I'm doing some pocket holes, the material can sit in here, clamp it on. It comes in handy when you've got, you know, drawer backs, or drawer bottoms, sorry, and so on, where you've got a bit of width there. But again, this is a great little jig, and it can be adjusted to suit different thickness materials as well, which is great. I generally use 16 to 18 millimeters, or sometimes 20, 21, something like that, in the manufactured board range. So this caters for that really well. It has a great dust port on the back, which I connect my vacuum to, and it actually, if you've got a good vacuum, when you do put your material on the front, it actually, because of the holes there of the pocket hole, it actually sucks it into the fence here, and it keeps it on there, and it sucks up all the dust really well. So this KREG jig here, a really favorite jig of mine, which I've been using a lot of lately, especially doing drawers. I use them for the drawer box applications. The drill bit comes with it, and you can actually buy these separately if you need to get them. Happy days with that jig there. So I hope you've liked this little video on the jigs. Like I said, they are probably my top jigs that I use a lot, and I wanted to share with you guys. And you've probably seen these jigs throughout some of my videos so far, which hence that's why, you know, they are some of my favorite jigs that I use all the time. I'm not making it up. And by the way, I'm not really sponsored. I'm not sponsored by these manufacturers by any chance. It's just sharing with you that, you know, these are some of the jigs that I use, and they're probably some jigs that I probably recommend that you get, you know, in the future when you start getting confident, or if you are starting to do some stuff from home, and doing repeatable amounts of things like the doors, for example. You know, you're probably going to need something like that Hinge jig. Again, you don't need to go to the most expensive jig if you don't want to, but and there are other makes that do them, like KREG, but you just need to check the applications and what hinges they suit. So like I bought that BLUM one to suit the BLUM hinges, because I like to use these hinges, and you know, it works well. So hopefully you've enjoyed this and learnt something from it perhaps, but keep an eye out for my next videos, and subscribe, press the like if you are happy with it, and hopefully I will see you in our next video.